Well, I'll go ahead and introduce you all if that's cool. So the Nova Lab is from, oh my gosh, I realized I never pronounced this word out loud. Gary, what is Perkiomen Valley?
Yes, Perkiomen Valley, you got it. Yes.
Okay, I read it in my head so many times. Great. In Collegeville, Pennsylvania. The Nova Lab is an open source learning course offered at Perkiomen High School. All right. The course centers purpose-based learning, innovation, social entrepreneurship, and design thinking, encouraging students to tackle real-world issues that align with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. And that's not even the first time today we've heard about the UN SDGs. This work builds into an ongoing social entrepreneurship project where students lead their own learning toward real world impact. So glad to have you join us, Gareth. It's been a long time coming. Yeah, welcome. And welcome to your students as well.
Yeah, thank you. And thank everyone. So what I've put together here is about a 20-minute long presentation that takes us from vision to reality. And then the students who are here, taking time out of their summers, I'd like to turn it over to them to give you a little bit of an overview of the projects that they did, and then just open it up really so that you can pepper them with questions and ask them about their experiences. And of course, ask me things too. But I'm going to be talking for a little while, and I generally don't, I always say I don't like to talk a lot, but I do. So, okay. But I'm glad that everyone is here, and I'm going to start sharing my screen, I guess. So let me get over here. Right. Share desktop 2. And I think you're seeing a black screen. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, then let's get started. So I had some music with this. It was sort of like the music from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Thus spake Zarathustra. It's very portentous music, if you can imagine it in the background. And then from vision to reality comes up. So just a real here we are. Now, just so you know, Nova Lab is short for Innovation Lab, which is the full name of the class. And that's what we're really about, is about innovation and social entrepreneurship. So I always like to say that, I have this class. The idea for this class is well over 10 years old, almost 20 years old for me. But without students, it would never have come to fruition. And I'll talk about that a little bit. But I treat the class like a startup, which is to say that the class is a project that is underway with both myself and with students. And I'm always working to figure out how I can document what we're doing in class and then use that documentation and judge it against things like the vision, the mission, the class values, and ask myself and ask the other students, how are we doing? How can we make this better? Even though I don't have a picture of it, I generally, in every presentation I do, mention the 2 questions that drive my class. And whether it's my English class, this class, or any class I teach, and they are, why are things the way they are, and how can we make them better? If you can keep those 2 questions in mind as we go throughout, I think you're going to see how they are enacted and embodied within this class. So let me give you, as teachers, right, one of the things that we always want to do is sort of start with our why, and also start with the end in mind. So rather than just jump into what do we do in Nova Lab, let me show you a little bit about what students do as sort of what is their end goal in Nova Lab. So I used to have a syllabus for class. I called it a syllafesto. It was 12 pages long, and no student ever read it from cover to cover because it wasn't really written for them. It was written for myself and to justify what I was doing to other teachers. But I took it this year and I created a visual syllabus this year, something that I hope will work better to help students and other people understand the class. It is a different kind of class. It's real world, project driven. Students come in, we do a lot of background work, and then they find a problem, form a team, design solutions, and test them out. So an iterative design thinking type method. These are some examples of projects that I've collected over the years, and I put them into the syllabus just because I have a full sampling of them. So let me show you just one, so you can get it sort of like a sense for what are the kind of things students are doing, and then keep that in your head as we go throughout. So this project is called Make It 100. It came out of the first year of class 2019-2020. And a young lady named Taya asked a question, or she actually like recognized that 2020 was a year for an election. And she wanted to make sure that every high school senior who was eligible to vote was registered to vote. That was her project, to run registration drives. Not, there's no partisan interest here. It is simply like voting is your voice. Voice is how democracy works. I want to run these kind of registration drives. So everything in this, by the way, you will have access to. So if you want to go in and dive deep down this rabbit hole, almost everything is clickable. So if you want to know what is Make It 100, well, they put together a website for you. And some of the things that they did were interviews with state senators. They created, if you have time, you got to watch this. It's one of the more masterful student music videos I have ever seen. I watched it again yesterday and I was just laughing because it's so good, and he's so dexterous with his wordplay. But these are the kind of things that they did. And remember, this is a COVID shortened year. This project never got to see its end, which is a shame, because when we presented this project at EduCon in Philadelphia, which is a national education conference at the Science Leadership Academy, there were two people from Edutopia, the George Lucas Foundation publication, in the audience. And they wanted to come out and film Taya and her team running these registration drives. They set it up for April. And of course, it never happened because that was the COVID year. So that was that, and it was a great project. There are many more great projects that you're going to hear about this year, or this during this time. But let me tell you this: like this vision for this class has a long history. When I was barely 2 or 3 years into my teaching career, I was asked to help create a class called Creative Expressions, and this came out of a 1996 Futures Conference where we did a portrait of the graduate. And one of the things the stakeholders wanted was they wanted a class in the middle grades where students focused on the connections between the static arts, the performing arts, and the literary arts. And what you can see here is some of the things that we did in that class. I bring it up not so I can dive really deep into this, even though those are very fond memories because it's the majority of my teaching career, but because one of the things that I really dove deep into with students towards the end of that was design thinking. I discovered design thinking in like 2005, and started doing projects with students. And by 2012, we were entering competitions with students with the Industrial Designer Society of America, and we were winning competitions. So our use of design thinking was a pretty amazing and forward-thinking piece of that. But I guess the success there got noticed because my superintendent said, "We need you at the high school." And they moved me to the high school at the peak of my success. And I was not happy. But the thing is, I don't think a lot of the students I had at the high school were all that happy either. And thus begins what I like to call the long, dark tea time of my soul. That's a head nod to Douglas Adams' novel, if you know it, and if you don't, you should read it. But my superintendent moved me in order to create a high school gifted English program that was different. And I took that descriptor literally, because I found that while these students were all very good at getting the A, like just tell me what to do and I'll get the A because that's what I've been taught to do. One of the things they weren't good at was figuring out what they wanted to do and what they were passionate about, and knowing how to pursue those to really purposeful ends. So because I told the superintendent that I could do different, I just jumped in right away, and I found out about purpose projects, genius projects, also called 20-time projects. Insert name of whatever you want to call a period of self-determined learning during a class or a week. And we jumped right into it. Now, this was kind of dangerous because it meant that, one, we were abandoning 20% of the traditional English curriculum. But I realized I could meet the writing standards and the research standards and the presentation standards, which many people forget about, by getting into these kind of projects. But the second reason was kind of dangerous because it posited us as outsiders. We were doing things that other classes weren't. And while that's a role that we had mostly grown accustomed to, it is a kind of lonely path. However, the results of those few years of experimentation in an English class, in self-determined learning, they proved addictive to both myself and to my students. And that's when I decided to write a manifesto, really. I seem to like writing manifestos. And I launched a proof of concept class that was called Design Lab. And Design Lab was based on a presentation I did to my superintendent and about 8 administrators from the high school. Within that 3-page manifesto, and I made sure every one of them had it, right? And it was full of bravado and probably a lot of hubris as well. You'll find such lines as, for all the accolades that we have achieved, we're reaping rewards from a system that can't see its own shortcomings written on the inside of its underwear. Yes, with the misspelling of its, that all went out there. The cool thing is that I guess people liked that, because the next year I had a class called Design Lab. 13 students, a semester long, and it was supposed to be a proof of concept. And because it was based on design thinking, we based it on the mindsets, if you're familiar with design thinking, from the D School out at Stanford: showing, not telling, being clear about your craft, mindful of your process, collaborating radically across lots of diversity, always having a bias towards action, not just talking about what you're going to do, but doing things, embracing experimentation, and focusing on human values. We had a logo. One of our students was quick to create, we need a logo for this class, Mr. Height. So Design for Difference was the logo. And as with anything that I've found that I start or that students realize is something new that's going on in class, there's an energy that comes with that is undeniable, and for me is addictive. I like being a beta tester and trying things out. And what wound up happening is they produced some of the most amazing work of students in my career. One of the first things that we did is we learned about community building and how to work together, and then we tackled our first design thinking project. We learned design thinking by turning towards the classroom and redesigning the classroom space. So I had them do research. The research had them come up with 4 standards. What does a classroom need to be if we're going to redesign it for the kinds of needs of the users of this classroom? It needed to be flexible, adjustable. It had to be able to have lots of expression, and it had to provide access to lots of different things. So the students did empathy interviews and empathy observations. They interviewed me. They interviewed students from my English classes. They interviewed people in other classes and watched them. They came back with those observations and they said, this is what's going on in other classes. How can we design to solve some of what we're seeing? But the first thing they did is create a how might we statement, right? And this how might we statement is the thing that really guided, what do we know? If we do this, this is how we know we will succeed. And after they had that, it was on to prototyping and ideating and prototyping. So they came up with ideas, and then lo-fi prototypes, they put them together. And these are some of the ones that were presented to our superintendent, our principal, and the school district foundation. This one here is the one that most people felt would be most viable. And so we got $3,500 to prototype what that class would look like. And here's one of the great things. I had almost forgotten about this. Over Christmas break that year, I had 5 or 6 students come in and we built one of these tables, and we painted walls. And when students came back in early January, the class had sort of been transformed because we were prototyping. We got foam cubes, and for the next few years, that's how the class stayed as we tested things out. But when a COVID hit, and those students had long gone because they had obviously graduated, but when COVID hit, my principal didn't forget that what she had seen in that class. And she threw some ESERS money at us. I had $18,000, and I went back to that student prototype and I said, how can I went to a company called Corbett Inc. And I said, show me what you have. This is the model that we're going for. And this is the way the classroom was modeled by them. And this is what the classroom looks like more or less now in different variations. Everything's on wheels. It's flexible, accessible, allows for student expression, and everything is adjustable. So bang, right? Like one down. What else can we do, Ms. Wright? That was an amazing success. Well, let's go redesign a library. So the middle school on our campus had contacted me because they were interested in redesigning the library, and they knew that I knew people in the design world. And I said, well, not only do I know people, but I have a class right now, and we're going to help. And I'm not going to go into the depth here, but everything on this page is clickable. And they ran through the same, we did interviews, we built empathy for users, we looked at the space, we took pictures, we created a how might we statement, we created a character, the point of view from a student and how they feel in the space currently and how we want them to feel. And then we created a report. And I go back to this report like every so many years. It's an amazing thing. The students were broken into teams. Some of the teams were about seating. Some of the teams were about shelving. Some of the teams were about wayfinding and signage. And it's just an amazing piece of work that they did. And after that, they went and they tackled their own problems. And at the end of a semester, I brought the superintendent back in and I said, look, we want to talk about why we think this class needs to continue. And I'm not going to read this. You can read this to yourself, but I just found this a couple of days ago in going through my files. And I had asked students in the class, why should this class continue? What was it about this class that moved you? And this is from a young lady named Irina. And it's really insightful. And I think any of the students who are here now, if they read that and they look at that, they're going to be like, yeah, that's what happens in Nova Lab too. So I said, if I can get this from a half a year, what can I do with a year's worth of time? Well, I can ask another question. What would a class look like if it focused on helping students develop purpose, a healthy sense of self, and a vision for their lives? What if learning were driven by the search for meaning rather than mandate? I think that harkens back to some of what I heard yesterday from our keynote speaker and throughout the sessions that I was in yesterday, right? Like we don't learn because we're told to. We learn because we seek meaning in the world, and meaning is what drives us. It's not happiness. It's not money. Those are, temporary things. If you've read Viktor Frankl's masterful work, Man's Search for Meaning, you know why this is true. And that's where, Nova Lab comes from. So let me just give you a few more insights into Nova Lab. Again, when it comes to the projects, and again, all these are clickable, and this one down here, Spike Valley, my friends Michael and Matt, who are in the audience today, have their Spike Valley shirts on. They're going to talk a little bit about the project they did. And Casey and Luke, I can pull up your projects. I think I can find them in the archive somewhere. But whenever students do a project, there's a couple of things. First, there are 3 key standards they have to meet. It has to be something they're not currently doing. It must be something they are passionate about, because passion provides the initial energy. And then it has to be something that has an impact on a community larger than the self. That means it has to be purpose driven. If you know the work of Bill Damon out of Stanford on youth purpose, he basically defines it this way, that it is a stabilized intention by the learner to engage in something meaningful to the self, but consequential to a larger community. Now think back to those 2 questions that drive everything I do. Why are things the way they are? How can we make them better? That's purposeful learning. And all these projects are purposeful. You can take a look at them. I added something here. Yesterday, in listening to the community lab presentation, people were asking about proposals. What do your proposals for student projects look like? So I went and I found some proposals from the original year that I had students do things. And you can see here's the Make It 100 proposal. This one's really good. This is Living Now. They created a lifestyle brand, and their purpose was to get students off of these things and out into nature and talking to each other again. And they were on a podcast with Bob Dylan. If you know Dr. Robert Dylan, his book Space and some other books that he's written, he did a podcast with these guys and Emma. They had an Instagram and a YouTube, and they raised over $1,000 in a COVID shortened year for the Appalachian Trail Fund. And you can see there's an overview, which is a narrative to set the context for what they're doing. What are you seeking to do? What's your objective? Why? And here's your sustainable development goals: good health and well-being, responsible consumption and production, climate action. They created a problem set, an essential question, and then when they presented, they took notes on what some of the pushback that people gave them. They have their team members, and they had a mentor as well. And so that's kind of things that I put in there. I asked them to define their standards. So they went into the Common Core and they found some standards that they could meet. And that way, like if any administrator comes in and says, oh, what are you doing? Oh, we're doing self-determined learning. Oh, really? What are you learning? What standards are you hitting? Here, read this, okay? Because like if I'm doing something meaningful, the standards can take a back seat, right? Not that they're not here, they're just taking a back seat. So when we do this kind of project work, we work in 2-week-long project scrums. At the end of those 2 weeks, students do a presentation publicly, but they're also using some technology that we have access to, which I'll show you next, okay? So now you know about the vision and how it came reality, and you know what the end goals are like and what students are doing. What are some of the nuts and bolts things that we're doing in class? Well, if you want to go to the Silifesto that I've talked so wonderfully about, there's a little link to it there. But if we go back to our visual syllabus and we take a look at this section on what will we do and what will we learn. So first, no class like this works without community. And so we build community in the beginning of the year, and we tend to it throughout. One of the ways I do that is through using Project Wayfinder. I don't have enough time in a day to talk about the amazing Project Wayfinder. Suffice it to say that I am good friends with the founder, Patrick Cook-Deegan, and their vice president of design is somebody I know personally. So I have access to the curriculum. Their purposeful leadership curriculum is what we use because it leads students through community building and then into finding projects and then putting those projects together. Again, we're working with design thinking. Again, all these things are clickable. So if you want this link, all you have to do is click it and you can go to it. This is the model we follow: building empathy, defining things, ideating, prototyping, and testing. But we're also after building certain mindsets. This is George Kouros's 8 characteristics of the innovator's mindset. You could also substitute in here, as I do, Clayton Christensen's innovator's DNA, and you'd still be working towards really great goals. We're looking to build entrepreneurial skills and entrepreneurial traits, but really the biggest thing that students learn in this class, and I'm sure some of the students will talk about it, is project management. How do I go from a vision I have to setting goals, breaking things down, and actually achieving that? Because it's hard. It is really hard. And I'm going to leave that up to the students to talk about. But what students can expect in this class, they can expect to weekly, they have to document their learning. That doesn't mean that they are assessing themselves. It means they are documenting. And if Angela Stockman is in this room, she knows what I'm talking about. And if you don't know Angela Stockman and what I'm talking about when I'm talking about documentation, then go find Angela Stockman and read her book on pedagogical documentation, because it will open your eyes. But Unruler is an app that we use to give students the power to document their learning. I'll show you some examples later. They take those Unruler posts or those weekly 3-2-1 videos and they create a learning journey every 2 weeks. That's the story of what they've done, what goals have they hit, where have they fallen short, and what's coming up next. That's a traditional Agile Scrum presentation, if you know Agile project management. The class is largely gradeless. If Susan Bloom is in the audience, then she knows what I'm talking about. And if you want to know more, you can click on this, because apparently I put together another slide deck where you can learn more about that kind of stuff. But that's sort of the nuts and bolts of things. And then this is an example of what students do at the end. So at the end, they have to do a portfolio. And this is Jane Bentley. Jane's project was to revive the zine movement from the 1970s and 80s, the underground sort of like, you know, handmade, here's what's going on in the arts and culture of the underground. And she put together this zine called Starving Artists. She tracks her project development here, and then further development here. But if you want to see what an Unruler post looks like, they're in an app, but the app then can be transported to a unique URL. So this is the first week and a half of Jane's work on her project. You see there's a timeline down bottom. Starting on January 4th through January 18th, she did some inception work, some initial sketches. She started work on a website, and then she started putting together what the zine was going to look like. So that's what an Unruler journey looks like. That's a lot to take in, but if you want any contacts at Unruler, let me know, because I can put you in contact with people at Unruler. So really, that's it, you know, for me. And if you have questions, there's plenty of time left, I'm pretty sure. But the real reason I'm here is for the students, right? Because we create this space, they populate the space, and whatever goes on there, my goal is simply to help them manage their learning. I'm learning all the time too, so documentation is something I do. If there's time at the end, we'll run this really smarmy little slideshow that takes me back over 2019 through 2023, and you can see students smiling and saying, "This is amazing." But I also do my own projects. This past year, I'm a teacher with 30 plus years experience in the classroom. If there's anyone out there like me, maybe at some point when you were a much younger teacher, you said to yourself, the energy and the time I am putting into my work now is unsustainable. What am I going to do when I'm 56 years old, which is what I am? How am I going to keep that up? Well, here I am. And I don't know how I'm doing it, but I'm still here. So I wrote some blogs about it. And those blogs are within this blog that I keep. The series starts on a blog called Still Hungry, Still Foolish on Teaching After 30 plus years. So again, it's really about the students. These are some of the students I've taught over the years. We obviously have a logo, we have a t-shirt, there's a cult aspect to this whole thing going on. But I'd like to really hand it over to the students now and ask them to provide some insight into what their projects were about, and maybe offer Chris or Nick, I don't know if you want to, you know, guide that. I'm going to go find Casey, I'm going to go find your project, and Luke, I'll find your project as well.
I have some like stuff pulled up from my project here, so you don't have to grab
That's
it.
awesome. Okay. So then Mike and Matt, why don't you start and sort of just say, you know, who you are. Here's what our project was. We'll get into it more a little bit later, and then we'll go to Casey, and then we'll go to Luke, and then we'll see if there are any questions, and then we'll do a deeper dive.
Sounds good. My name is Michael. I have the privilege of taking Mr. Height's class twice. I was able to take his gifted English class my sophomore year, and I took his Nova Lab class again my senior year when Matt and I did the project.
And then my name is Matt. I was able to take Nova Lab twice, once in my junior year with Casey in my class, and then again in my senior year. So I was also privileged to be able to take this twice. And I think that kind of both speaks to the testament of the hard work that Mr. Height does, that we would both be crazy enough, smart enough, whatever the word you want to use is, to come back and go to the well again. Our project, you saw the logo earlier, it's called Spike Valley. It stemmed from another idea that some local high schoolers had. Down at the shore every 4th of July, a group of students host a spike ball tournament. If you're unaware of what spike ball is, it's like floor, foursquare volleyball. There's a net, you hit it. We're still not good at explaining what it is, but it's a great game. And we decided a lot of our friends really loved that sport, and we knew that there were people around our community that were in need, and we decided, why don't we merge the two and make Spike Valley?
Yeah, so we started, early fall, getting everything together with that. We had our tournament late spring. We had 64 teams, I believe, so over 128 people. And then we were able to raise just about $2,000 for the Arc Alliance while we were in the process of, organizing the tournament. We had all donations for the nets. We went out, we were able to get a ton of community support just from local sponsors. Which was really, really cool to see, with just the entire community coming together just to, we walk into a pizza shop and say, hey, can you help us out here? And they love the idea. They love kind of the direction where we're going. So in the end, we were able to donate to Arc Alliance. We went to their event at Elmwood Park Zoo and kind of, keep that movement going. And then this year, the event ran again. We kind of passed it on to the next generation of students running. We were able to kind of mentor and, help out with that process this year. And they're hoping to continue it for the next couple of years.
The Arc Alliance, in case you're interested, is a local organization, nonprofit that helps students with disabilities manage their way through school and then life. So we were really able to make great connections there. And we wouldn't have had time or the space or the resources to do something like this if we just tried to do it in our free time. Doing it in Nova Lab was super helpful. We were able to collaborate with people like Casey and with people like Luke and with people like Mr. Height to really make this kind of dream a reality.
Yeah, and I think just one thing that Matt and I, whenever we look back at this, is one of the most impactful events we were able to do our entire high school career.
Sure.
Like, even where, whatever classes we took, sports, everything like that, this will be the one thing that, like, I'm the most proud of from high school. And a lot of that is from the build up, the community building, everything kind of stems from that cultural aspect in the classroom.
Yep. Cool. Take it away, Casey.
Hi guys, my name is Casey, and I graduated this year from Perkins Valley. I took Mr. Height's class my sophomore year, and I was the youngest, if not, I think I was the only sophomore in all juniors and seniors. And my counselor, Miss Carla Zielinski, who's one of the most amazing people I've ever met, recommended this class to me, and basically it changed my life, honestly, because I was in a point in my life where I was like really lost and thought I wanted to be a teacher for my whole life, and then lost my desire or love for it. And then this class pointed me in the direction to where I'm going to pursue a degree in education, and basically restored my faith in almost everything, which is dramatic, but it's true. I think that the relationships I made, it literally almost brings me to tears, because it's the only class that I've ever had where it's just like I felt like I could be exactly who I was, which hadn't really ever happened to me before. And I think that's what restored my hope in like being a teacher and being a mentor and a leader. So with that being said, my project was called Choose Kind, spelled CHEWS, like you're chewing food, but chewing gum. And this is basically what it started from. It's a gum wrapper heart. And I went into this class having zero idea like what I wanted my passion project to be. And I didn't have a partner, not because no one wanted to be my partner, but I think I just felt like I didn't know how to do it with someone else, or that my ideas weren't good enough. So I was kind of a latecomer to my idea, but basically the idea of it was that I wanted to just spread these little hearts around. And it happened when one of my classmates, like I would chew gum all the time. And I would make one of these little hearts every time that I did and just give it to the person next to me, like regardless if I knew them or not, because I don't know, I just thought it was fun and cute. And then I started like seeing them, like other people like doing it, like my friends. And I was like, And a classmate of mine, her name's Serena, she started making a collection on her teacher's wall of them. So I was like, all right, we're going to do it. Like, choose kind. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you guys will be able to see. Oh no. I'm like a grandmom when it comes to this. Okay. I just want to show you my. Oh no. Just give me 1 second, guys. Okay. I think it's going to work. Can you guys see it?
Nope.
Yes? No? No, guys.
I
Get used
hated
to
to
this,
tell you because
Casey.
you were
This
so
happens
excited
all
about
the
it.
time
But
to teachers. Okay, so
What did you say?
I said get used to it. This happens all the time to teachers, right?
During Zoom, I was like, let me just share my screen. Let me share my screen. Can you see it now or no?
no,
Okay, it's
unfortunately.
fine. I'm on a new computer anyway, so I have to set up
If you share the link with one of us, maybe we could share it for you.
Okay.
If you want to put like the link in the chat.
It's just a link to a picture, but it's my logo. And basically, it's I made the logo and it's a red version of this. And my dad was able to like print it out on a big piece of paper. And I made a bulletin board and it said, don't just chew gum, choose kind. And I had this little thing next to it. And it was called the Affirmation Station. And I would post like weekly links to like little quotes that I liked. And sometimes I would design my own on Canva. And I'm not sure if people actually used it. I saw some traffic on like the link. It was, what's it called? It's when people put the link in their bio and there's like a lot of things that you can click on. It was like my Instagram and then the Affirmation Station and
Link
like people
tree.
click on
Link
it.
tree.
Link tree. Yes, a link tree. This is more and more why like I'm a grandmom. I don't even know. Like it's a link tree. So people, would share these little hearts and I created an Instagram page and it was just this sweet little testament to like my personal growth and growth as a person who struggles with anxiety and just I was becoming myself and this project helped show it. So that's all. Okay, I'm gonna try to put the link in the chat. 1 second.
Luke, I did find your final presentation, the one that you put together, I think it was the one for Flux Space. I don't know if you want me to put it up or if you just want to talk, it's up to you.
I can probably just talk. That's fine.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name's Luke. Not to one up Michael and Matt, but I took Mr. Heist gifted on his English class and then Nova Lab twice. So 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Had a great time with him. Love the guy. Keep coming back, obviously. And I kind of jumped around a lot with my projects. So in my junior year of Nova Lab, I didn't really know where to go. And it was kind of during COVID. So my friend Jackson and I, we went to a nearby retirement home and made a bunch of cards, like Christmas cards for them, because it was during COVID and they wouldn't be able to see family members. And that was like a 2-week project. So it was a great way to just kind of get things rolling, get used to the process. And then after that, I kind of jumped around a lot the rest of my junior year. And I'm a person with a lot of ideas. So that's kind of what my experience was at first. And then I took the class again and found that in senior year, I just had to commit to something. So I did a project called Happiness Unlocked, and a classmate and I made a website and made a huge list of things that we wanted to accomplish for the rest of the class that year. And so our first one was juggling. So what we did is we made a website and we had a list of things to accomplish and we learned how to juggle and we tracked our progress each time. And then we moved on to the next task. So we have a video of us like learning how to juggle and our progress and everything. And then we learned sign language next. And then at the end of the year, we were learning how to shoot a basketball properly. And we were both at different points in each of these things. But it was cool because the whole point of unlocking happiness was just to, I'm a person with all these ideas. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to actually do something with them because Nova Lab gives me that time. And that was a really good experience. And I can still juggle. I can juggle 5 balls now. So that's cool. Sign language didn't stick as well. And that's, that's something that comes with the project. It's not all successes, but yeah, I think I have a bit of a unique experience because I did jump around a lot more than most people did in the class. And I still found it super valuable.
I think one of the things that Luke points to is that, that's built into the class is that this is a space, and my tagline, and I'll pat myself on the back for this bit of genius. The tagline is, it is a space for inspiration, aspiration, respiration, and creation, right? And that means that, if you need to take a break and some time to breathe and like, I'm done with this project, it's built into the way the class runs. You simply have to justify, okay, why are we leaving this one? It's not like you can just, leave every week and just leave things half done. You have to pursue things towards purposeful ends. But if they don't work out and that's not where you want to go, I mean, one of the reasons the class exists is so that you can break down the traditional, like, you have to do this of school, and to explore the things that you're interested in and show people what you can learn on your own. Questions?
Yeah, if anybody has questions, go ahead. You can raise your hand, as we've been as been the process for the last couple days, or feel free to drop them in the chat. Yeah, I'm looking to see if there's any I missed or
I have a
like
question. So to all of the students here, I'm super curious to hear from you about how you move from something that's super simple, like a transcript that has your grades or your SAT scores or whatever, to something that's much messier, like a digital portfolio, and Unruler being an example of that, and that how you explain that to people, because that's a complicated idea. And one of the skills of the 21st century is the ability to explain a complicated idea. So if somebody says, like, give me the nutshell on who you are, what your skills and habits and dispositions are. And instead of just saying, well, I had a 2.6 GPA in high school, which I did, and it was awful and horrible, I can actually explain something much more complex. I wonder if you can just share a little bit about that. I don't know, Casey, you want to go first on that one? You're on mute.
Okay, so I think a lot of it has to do with just accepting, and it was hard for me at first because I'm very like, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And it was really difficult for me, I'll be honest. But I think looking to older kids who had done it before probably helped me the most. And now I think, especially with being able to do like education and like learning to, observe classrooms and how to, make lesson plans and observing how teachers teach. I think once I have that, and once now I have that knowledge, it's really interesting to see why some teachers just can't break away from it, because it's hard. Even though it's so effective, it is really hard. And I think a lot of people are so stuck in their ways that no one's really willing to like kind of push I think it's a lot of just accepting and trying again.
Awesome. Others?
So yeah, I think you bring up a good point about like it's very difficult, especially in the latter half of your high school career, to go from tests, quizzes, essays, all that stuff, to just like, let me like right now put you on a Zoom and explain what you did 2 years ago. Like that's not like easy for most people. But we practiced a lot. Like I know we had so many things we presented for. We went to a place in Norristown called Flux Space, where we would have to, on like, Mr. Height, how big was that screen we had to present on? It was like the size of a home. And it was in front of,
no, it's 9 foot by 14 foot.
there you go.
Yeah.
So on front of that huge screen to present in front of people that are much like farther along in their journeys than us, and just kind of practicing stuff like that. And then at least to me, and I think to us, because we presented a lot together, it became really intuitive. Like it became easier to get up there and talk about Spike Valley or whatever we do than for me to write down and explain to you why the eye sees color, like in an essay. It just felt a lot more intuitive to get up in front of a group of people and explain it. So I came through a lot of practice, which I credit to Mr. Height for putting us through those kinds of trials. But in the end, I think we tapped into our intuitive human nature to want to talk to people and explain it, in ways that are a little less educational and smart, maybe. I don't know.
Did you find yourself kind of naturally starting to talk about what you did and what you can do rather than what you are, like a grade?
I think definitely. I think it was more like less about, like you said, a grade. And Mr. Hyde talked about the gradeless aspect of the class. We rarely even we really never focused on grades in the class. It was like, what are you doing in Nova Lab? And then, give them an elevator pitch of what you're doing. That just felt like it came pretty naturally after some time.
Yeah, I would say that was honestly just as big as an emphasis as the design thinking was building kind of an image of who you are. Like we did a ton of personal statements with the elevator pitches and those types of kind of activities that are really important. But, in retrospect, looking back, I've used those skills a dozen times in, 2 semesters of college with, interviews, everything like that. And that's kind of I think the easiest way to sell a type of gradeless classroom is saying, sure, the grades are just as important. They might get you into places, but in order for you to kind of build on those grades and your skills, you have to have the ability to communicate and say who you are and how you can, use those skills to help, your employer, the world, anyone in that kind of nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, super interesting.
I don't have too much to add, but I will say at first the transition from a normal grade to like using Unruler and presenting all the time, it was kind of annoying because you have to put all this extra effort in and you're held more accountable. But then Mr. Height will, we'll be presenting and he'll ask us how much we did, and then you can just pull something up and be like, this is my progress. This is exactly what I did this week. This is exactly what I accomplished. And then that kind of feels good. It's like, yeah, you're being held more accountable, but it's also, you don't have to hide behind a grade. You can really just show what you've done. And I think that's much more valuable because in some other classes, you can take shortcuts. But in this class, when you're presenting things to your classmates and you're doing conferences with Mr. Height and you're posting on these apps like weekly or daily, there's really no way to cut corners. You have to do work. And figuring that out is an important step for everyone that starts the class. And once they do, you really start to see progress being made.
And Luke, it would be fair to say that you are engaging in a process of storytelling. You're telling your story over and over and over again, talking to people and saying, I did this. These are the skills that I developed. This is what I accomplished. I'm telling my story. Yeah.
Absolutely. And on these apps, on Unruler specifically, I think there was a timeline feature where you could, like, you would post daily, and then on the most important ones, you group them together and you say, this is like the biggest steps that I took. So definitely it was telling a story, and you can go and say, this is where I started. This is the progress I made. And there might be some slow spots, but this is the end product. And it was much easier to explain everything using that method.
Awesome. Thank you to all 4 of you.
I'm just kind of curious about like how this is translating to y'all's like many of you are graduating slash have graduated now. How this is translating to college career. That's like a really big question, all the time in education is how do we prepare students for the future? What are the skills that you're learning right now that you feel like directly prepare you for, your aspirations, the things that you're aiming towards?
Yeah, we'll start here. We're both in college. Michael and I have both done a year of college, and I can tell you that the skills that I had to learn to make a project like this work, or even anything I did in Nova Lab work, like we talked about, going door to door, talking to business owners, reaching out through email, making calls, balancing a sheet up, like a Google sheet, making sure all your ducks in a row, your t-shirts are like all that stuff is like so important. Because when you get to college and you have to walk into a lecture hall of 400 people and you got to introduce yourself to your professor, and if you've never cold called or talked to anybody like that, it can be kind of scary. Talking about yourself, selling yourself, like Michael said, in interviews, selling yourself to different schools, like in college applications, all that is so vital to the world we see today and the businesses we see today, that I don't really remember much about my 10th grade biology class, but I can remember everything about how to talk to, like, give a presentation, how to introduce yourself, where like it's super important. I think, post grad.
Yeah, and I would second. I had a very big emphasis on my grades as well in high school. I'm planning on going on the pre-med track and studying biology. So I'm also very, academically driven with the regards to strictly grades as well. But I think I'm also playing football in college, and we did kind of a like seminar. We've done multiple with doing literal elevator pitches for every member of our team to send out to alumni to make connections. And that is one of the easiest experiences I've ever had to do, just because of how many times I've done it in class. Because you can really sell yourself if you've worked on just by practicing it, maybe even a few times, it makes it that much easier. And with the extent that we were able to do it in that class, it's made a kind of a big difference already.
Right. Yeah.
On the note of project management here, just to bring a note, and Gareth, maybe we can bring you back in here too, but I'd be curious to hear from students about the project management side. But Natasha asks, can we get more info on how you do project management? Are there kind of tools? Do you kind of just kludge it together with different, you talked about managing spreadsheets and all these, or is it just Unruler? What other pieces helped support the project-based work that you did?
So I just put a link in the chat that. So I wrote this blog post a couple of years ago called "Measure Less, Learn More," and it's really how I came to Unruler. But what it does is it takes a look at how do I, as a teacher, with potentially 25 different projects going across 2 classes, how do I manage that? How do I track what's going on and whatnot? And how do I make sure that students are being held accountable, right? Because it can be really tiring and really imprecise. And I don't know that it's as much about the precision as it is about, as Luke noted, like, getting up, doing the presentations, and holding yourself accountable. And like, I think one of the things that Luke said that's really important is that if you did nothing, you still have to get up, and you still have to, and everyone knows, right? So, and there are some students for like, that's just where they are. And my job is to help move them forward, or at least engage them with other people's projects. Maybe they have a skill set that they can help out someone else with. But that's sort of like ancillary to this. I think the key thing is that it is an agile structure. So we start with the proposals, and then they start work and they figure out, okay, what do I like? I've got this elephant called Spike Valley. How do I break this thing down into manageable parts? Breaking large projects down into manageable parts is really hard. Figuring out what you should do first and whatnot. There's a great AI app that I found early in this past school year. It's called Goblin Tools Magic To-Do List. And you type in, I want to create a documentary of the playground at my elementary school. And it will break down for you what are the steps that you should do. Like, scope it out, figure out the shots that you want, storyboard your what you want to shoot. And it'll break those things down even further. You can like go in and drill down as far as you want. At a certain point, it breaks down, but it expedites that part of the process of project management, which is the breaking things down into manageable parts, and then scheduling those things out and saying, what are you going to do this 2 weeks? So I know Luke and Matt, there were times where we were like, okay, you're going to present to small groups and you're going to get a sheet back, and the sheet's going to say, here's where I think this person's doing a great job, here's some ideas I have, what are the goals that they tried to achieve this week, and what didn't they get to? And so there were certain like, physical, I'm doing a presentation, I'm getting back some feedback, and that feedback is reminding me, oh, this is my goal for the next 2 weeks. So really it's an iterative process of setting goals, holding yourself accountable, presenting again on those goals, and then moving on again, and always keeping timelines in mind. So that's a really messy way of answering. I think it's Natasha's question, but I'll let the students jump in on this too.
I think.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead, Luke. Go ahead, Luke.
I was going to kind of chime in on both questions that were asked there. So I'm also a college student. I just finished my first year, and I know that Novolab has helped me with project management, not just for projects, but for everything. I started working out consistently at college, and something that I know how to do now is keep a journal of like what workouts I did and what progress I'm making, and I know how to set goals for myself. So that's been super helpful. I told Mr. Height about this. I started a succulent business, which was something that I've wanted to do for a while. It's not going great in the summer right now. Most of my room is really hot, so it's hard to do out of a room or a dorm. But either way, I'm having a lot of fun, and I know how to manage that. And I joined the Ultimate Frisbee team, and I'm the treasurer. So I had to say a speech for that, and I have to learn how to manage that money, and I'm learning how to do all that. But I know because of Novolab, it's a lot, but it's not intimidating to me because I know how to break things down, and I know how to make it less bulky.
I think I'm not in college yet. I'm going into my freshman year of college at the University of Vermont. And I think without even being there yet, I know who I am. And I've figured out a lot about myself because of this class. And then it kind of trickled down in a domino effect because after it, it was during that year I had a pretty big span of self growth and self understanding. And I think going to answer the project management part of the question, when you understand yourself, you understand what works for you. And there are some days where it's just like, I just can't today. And I need to I would sit on Mr. Height's floor and play with his sound bowl, which was probably much to everyone else's, like, everyone was probably like, oh my gosh, this crazy girl again. She's on the floor and she's not wearing shoes either. And there were just some days where I just had to sit down and be like, I need 10 minutes to just be like, I just need some enrichment time. And then I would get right back to work because no one cares if you're having a day where it's like, okay, I just need to like have a chill time. People care if you're getting your work done, which, you can have those times and then still like get your stuff done, which I think is like a really important like testament to the class because no one really batted an eye at what I was doing. And I think that's because everyone had their own ways of like, I need to just figure this out for a second. I need to just have some time to, figure out what I'm doing. So, yeah.
Any other closing thoughts on that one here? Otherwise, I think maybe owing to time, we'll start to wrap things up. Gareth, do you have any closing thoughts or anywhere you'd send people if we wanted to know more about Novolab, the project, what students are going to be up to this coming fall?
What they're going to be up. Well, I'll tell you this. Yesterday I was spending some time and I was like, I'm going to get a soundtrack for class this year. So I was putting together a soundtrack, and I don't know if any of the students remember, I played these songs by Michael Fronte and Spearhead. One was called Start Small, Think Big, and the other one was called Work Hard, Be Nice. So I just like kept following him on YouTube, and I put together, I think I got enough songs for like musical Mondays for the whole year, and we'll just have like a soundtrack for the week for each year. So
You're set.
that's where I am so far with that. I do know that I am going to be using a PBS series called A Brief History of the Future. It's about futures thinking, and there's some beautiful stuff in there about what does it mean for us as human beings, and what does it mean for us as human beings together, right? Like, in addition to the questions of what matters to me and what am I going to do about it, there are 4 other questions that I use. Christian Talbot, if you know Christian, he published these a couple years ago. They come from the work of Yuval Harari's 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. Who am I? Who are we? What matters to me? And what am I going to do about it? Right. So like, it's just a little bit more of those, you know, like why are things the way they are? How can we make them better? So those kind of two things there. I also have two blogs.
One just wasn't enough. You had to
So one is for the class. And if you go to that one, pvhsnovalab.com,
okay.
that was actually redesigned by a student. That was redesigned by, I might be like losing connections. I don't know. But that was redesigned by a student. And the other one is onlyconnects.wordpress.com. It would appear as though I am no longer, I don't know. Am I
We
back?
can still see you and hear you.
We hear
So
you.
Okay.
It's just not going in the chat, it looks like.
All right. So onlyconnects.wordpress.com is the other one.
there it
And
is.
then you can also find me on LinkedIn and Instagram. Not on Twitter anymore. I'm sad about that, but not, you know, I've got time back now, and so whatever. Okay.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us, Gareth, for being kind of our guide, the students for elaborating on all your experiences. Congratulations on your recent graduations. Good luck with the school year ahead, and all of that. And have a great rest of the summer. All right. For conference participants, we'll be back in this space with Pam Moran and Ira Sokol at the top of the hour at 5 p.m. Eastern time, so in about 25 minutes or so, to talk about a space for everyone, humane learning spaces supporting human learners. Thank you all again so much, participants, teachers, students alike. This is what it's about. Take care, all.
All right.
Thanks,
Take care,
Chris.
everyone.
Thanks for
I knew
having us.
someday I'd be the opening act for Pam and Ira.
Hey,
Hey, Gareth, I hope you come back. I tell you, that was absolutely fabulous.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
I'll be back, Pam. Yep.
Okay, I'll see you. Bye-bye.
Awesome.